The biggest challenge in chess is to win a winning position. Let me walk you through an absolutely crazy game I have just played and explain you how you should take maximum out of the chances you get in your own games. What's up, chess player, and welcome to the Journey to Grandmaster, the place where you can improve every single aspect of your chess game. And today I'm gonna share with you an embarrassing game because I played it as black and it starts like a perfect game for me, but somehow I spoiled absolutely everything. So let's see what happened. It started with the Sicilian defense. I'm playing as black and I want to, get some interesting position so that I can outplay my opponent. He surprises me already on move 3. He plays, instead of normal knight takes d4, queen takes d4. And you remember, you normally don't want to develop your queen too early into the game. Why? Because even though in the center of the board the queen controls so many squares, it can easily be attacked by your opponent's pieces. So you normally don't want to do that, because what it means is that when your queen is under attack, you need to spend yet another tempo. So your opponent is basically developing his pieces for free, and you don't want that. You want to develop all of your pieces as fast as possible and as active as possible. This is your golden goal, and not starting with the queen. Please remember it. This is what got my opponent into trouble here. So he quickly played queen to d3, but now I'm just continuing the development. I play knight f6. I already kind of catching up in terms of overall development. We both developed two pieces, but I developed two minor pieces and he developed one knight, one minor piece and one major piece. And you don't want to start with the major pieces exactly for that reason. Minor pieces are more effective in the very beginning because they can attack the major pieces, and then major pieces have to spend time to somehow deal with it. Now, you might be wondering what happens if my opponent plays e5. This is not a great move because I can just capture this pawn, and after takes I have this cute little check, queen to a5, attacking the knight and basically winning a pawn. So this is the tactical justification. My opponent plays c4, which you immediately see is a mistake here. Why? Well, for the same reason. My opponent is not developing the pieces. It's as simple as that. The key to success in the opening is to develop your pieces, not pawns. The pawns are important there to open up the way for your pieces. But if you are only playing with your pawns, it's not going to end well. And this is a very, very good example for that, because I'm developing my third piece. Now you see a miss sign because the engine says queen b6 is a better move. But first of all, it's breaking the same rule, developing the major pieces before the minor one, and also the variation are not that convincing for me. So I'm not a big fan of this move. But bishop to c5, I thought this is a very good solution here, because I'm putting pressure on this pawn. I'm immediately creating threat with knight to g4, which is very, very annoying to deal with. And queen to b6 is still a valuable option for me if I need one more attacker. That would be also a double attack here, for example, against bishop to g5. I guess that, yeah, basically wins the game with this nasty double attack. The knight is also putting pressure here, so this is crazy. But yeah, knight g4 is not an easy way to deal with, and the engine confirms it because it says the only move to more or less maintain equality is to play bishop e3. But both me and my opponent thought it's not an option, because I can just play knight to b4 and then take here, and you're not allowed to take with the queen because you lose your queen after knight to c2 royal fork. So you have to take with the pawn, and then this is a horrible pawn structure to live with. If that's the best you can get as white, then something definitely went wrong in the opening, so I was completely fine getting such a position. Instead, my opponent played h3, which feels logical. I mean, you just deal with a horrible, horrible threat, knight to g4, but the problem is it's yet another move with a pawn. And now you see the situation where I have already developed 3 minor pieces and my opponent has only developed 1, which means I have a huge advantage and I should use it somehow. So I decided it's a perfect moment for me to break through in the center and play the move d5. Now, I'm not sure about the right execution of this idea, because the engine claims there is knight b4, which is even better, and then play d5, but it's not that easy for me to understand. Like, if you play a3, then I have queen a5, some absolutely crazy lines, and bishop d2 apparently doesn't work here because of knight c2 and then queen a4. Okay, yeah, that actually feels very interesting, but at the same time very difficult, because there is no direct threat of knight c2. The knight is just like staying there, scaring your opponents, like giving this feeling that something might happen. And after takes, you just play queen a5 once again with a devastating effect, apparently knight c3. You just castle, and thanks to this huge lead in terms of the development, all of those pieces are back there. You're ready to somehow open up the e-file and then crush your opponent kind of immediately. So this is huge. Instead, I played d5 immediately. I felt like, okay, I need to use this momentum before my opponent can catch up in terms of the development. And also this move e5 was annoying for me. Like if I play castles, I thought, yeah, my opponent can play e5 and then I have to go back, and then, it's not that great for me. So I'm using this moment to play d5 immediately, takes, and here I can just take on d5 and probably have a little bit more pleasant endgame, but my idea was to play queen to e7. And still, queen to e2 has to be played. If you play bishop to e2, somehow you're lacking this one tempo to castle and be into safety, because I immediately play knight b4, I'm attacking the queen. The queen basically has no moves. Like queen c4, I guess, would be a desirable move. By the way, queen b5 check doesn't help you because of bishop d7, and that is very important. I cannot play knight b4 here immediately because of queen b5. Suddenly, it's still possible, yeah, because you can play knight d7 and defend, but that's not what you want to do, to go back. You would be happy to play bishop d7, but unfortunately the bishop is hanging on c5. So that is why I gave this check first. Queen to e7, and after queen e2, now I play knight to b4, so that I always have this bishop d7 and the bishop is protected, for example, in case of some bishop e3 or knight e5 variation. But my opponent just took it, and I thought, okay, now we have reached the endgame, where definitely I had the advantage. As having black pieces, this is a perfect outcome of the opening. And it's not that simple to deal with these threats. My opponent plays knight to e4. Maybe here I should have played knight to e4. I have thought about this move. Somehow d6 was a problem for me. And then one of my pieces should go back, because if I take with the king, then this bishop comes to f4 with a check, and then long castles maybe also with a check. I don't know, doesn't feel nice. Also, the knight is coming to e5. And if I go to d8, there was also times when I didn't like, just bishop to e3. And once again, this pawn stays there, the king stands on the way of my rooks. It's not what I want to achieve. So the right move is just knight takes d6. But somehow I thought it's not my idea to, I played knight to e4 to attack here, not to go back. But the agent claims it's still a huge advantage. Rook d8. Yes, I didn't want to allow my opponents to get away with it, but seems like development is the key here. I mean, this pawn is hanging, white pieces are still far from being developed, whereas I need just one more tempo. I mean, everything is equal. The pawn structure is completely symmetrical, but because I have a huge lead in terms of the development, I have the advantage here. This is very important principle to understand in chess. Imagine how cool it would be to play chess without ever having opening troubles again. What if I told you I could teach you all openings you will ever need in just 10 days? You get lifetime access to more than 110 pure value video tutorials, almost 100 practical tasks to apply your knowledge immediately into practice, 30 plus bonus videos to dive 10 times deeper, as well as private community where all questions you might ever have are answered daily. Get the $200 limited time discount with the link in the description, and forget about all opening pain once and for all. So anyway, instead of this move knight to e4, I have played bishop f5. I decided, okay, I'm doing exactly the same. I'm bringing my last minor piece into the game. I'm ready to bring my rooks as well and just crush him in the center. And I still hope not to allow him to castle. For example, if you play bishop to b5, then I decided, well, yeah, here I can even play a6, so it's a bad move. Bishop c4 is better, but I thought either bishop d3 or knight d3 should be on my agenda. He played bishop e2, and I still played the same. Knight to d3 check, he takes, I take back, and now you cannot castle. Very important to try to maintain this king in the center, because once I bring the rook there, it would be devastating for the king. He played bishop e3, trying to block it. I don't exchange it, because then it's relatively simple for my opponent to defend this one weakness and survive. So I played bishop b4 instead, and after bishop d2, just took on d5, and that seems to be correct. And I'm still anticipating bringing the rooks into the center. Bishop takes, knight takes. This is a mistake, huge advantage for black here out of the opening, so this is like a perfect outcome. When I look at it now, I cannot understand how I managed not to win this position. So he played knight e5, I'm bringing the rook, which is a mistake. Okay, what is the right move? Just bishop to a6. Yeah, I didn't want to give this time to my opponent to castle, but that was also on my agenda, just to play f6, and when the knight goes back, then yeah, even just rook 8 to d8, it's that simple, and the position is basically winning because this bishop is so much superior over this knight, and this knight d3 is coming, and f2 is hanging. This is just a winning position. So surprising how huge the advantage is. I didn't want to allow that. I really wanted to bring all of my pieces as fast as possible. Here I made another inaccuracy. I shouldn't have taken on d3 immediately. I should have just played king to f8. And I was afraid somehow of king to d2. Not in terms of it's dangerous for me, but in terms of that my opponent can finish his development. But it turns out it's not the case because knight d3 is attacking here the f2 pawn. The king on c3 is still not that stable. So for example, rook d1, just knight takes f2. Yeah, just a very healthy extra pawn as well as better piece placement. So absolutely nothing to be afraid of. I cannot understand it. But okay, I played knight d3 and then I played rook to d8. Still a very pleasant position because here I'm just playing king to f6. For some reason knight b2 is even stronger. How that... Ah, okay, because I take with the king. Then king d2, I just play knight to a4 and enjoy my extra pawn. Okay, it felt so reasonable for me to give this check first before taking the pawn on b2 that I just couldn't resist it. But okay, it's also strong enough. And then my opponent played rook b1, which is not that great. He just missed the fact that I could play rook d2 and there is no knight to c4. This is the moment when I talk about, this is when I felt, okay, this is just a few moves from winning. How on earth can you save such a position? And I'm playing pretty good this game. I don't really make any mistakes. Yes, maybe I don't use the full potential of my chances, but still I got a huge position. I have an extra pawn and my pieces are so much stronger than his. It feels like I just need one move and you should resign. But my opponent plays rook e1, and here I guess I made a very big practical mistake. I played rook to d8. And yes, I have seen that I can just exchange the rooks and then play rook to d3, but I didn't want to get into this rook endgame. Yes, I have an extra pawn, but in all these rook endgames, it's always very difficult to convert the advantage. But here, it's a very healthy pawn. And in fact, the engine says it's not just +1 pawn, but +3 pretty much, because the king is also much more active. This rook puts a lot of pressure on white's position. White's rook basically has no chances, so I should have just done it. It was simple enough to win this. But instead, I decided to save the rooks on the board, and that's like when you have two pairs of rooks, there are always chances for some craziness to happen. Some threats, especially if the knights are involved, it's even worse than that. But here, feel free to pause the video for a second and find the move for black, because this is the moment when I could have just, basically win the game. Okay, I hope you have found it. The move is a6. As surprising as it might be, it basically wins the game because it shuts down the opponent's counterplay. And this is very important in chess, especially when you have a winning position. This is the recipe for success. Don't allow your opponent to create any counter chances. If he doesn't have it, he has no chances to get the advantage back, to equalize the position again, and somehow to get back into the game. The reason why I didn't play a6, it was my idea the whole time. I wanted to do that. The knight has absolutely zero moves. This is my dream. But I was afraid of this move, rook to e2. And yes, I have seen that I can play rook to d1. This rook goes back, and here comes the key move, because the knight is hanging. If you just take it here, that's actually also not that bad. I can play knight d3 and then b5. Everything is fine. But the key move here is rook 8 to d2, and then I'm protecting this knight. You cannot take it, because I'm not going to take your rook back. I'm going to take this one first with a check, and then this one, extra exchange, game over. And if you take everything here, then of course it's knight endgame with an extra pawn. a2 is also a huge weakness. Very easily winning position. I can't imagine why I didn't play it. Somehow my brain just collapsed, stopped to work, because a6 is such an easy move. Unfortunately, I played b6 instead, and that seems like, yeah, achieving this goal of making sure that b6 doesn't hang, but the problem is the knight gets activated, and suddenly it's not that simple now. I should have just protected the pawn, and still everything is okay. I mean, no real troubles. Yes, the knight is now more active, but I can deal with it. Unfortunately, I played a huge mistake here, the move knight to c4. I mean, this is just a complete blindness. So I was ready for knight takes a7. I was completely fine with it because I have, I don't know, a lot of ideas, rook a8, or rook takes a2, or just rook to d7, and then no, rook d7 is not a good move. Rook second to d7, okay. This is something surprising, and knight b... okay, knight d2. It's so simple. Come on, I haven't seen this tactic at all, because yes, I saw the move rook takes a2, but this is a difference, because now you can play rook a1 and defend the knight, and if I play rook 2 to d7, then there is just double threat, and you cannot deal with both of the threats simultaneously. Okay, but it all doesn't matter, because knight a7 is not the problem. The problem is rook e to c1. Now I lose the entire advantage. It's just gone in one move. I mean, this is so crazy. I finally realize I cannot do anything. This pawn is hanging, this knight is hanging. It's a double threat, and I have no move for my rook to go so that I create this knight d2 threat. I thought maybe rook d4 can work, but yeah, somehow it doesn't. Into e1, it takes b1, and yeah, the knight just goes back, and we are on the same page. Once again, the knight is hanging, and the pawn is hanging, and the knight is in a horrible position. No, that's not a path to win the game. I played knight to d6, trying to stabilize somehow, but it's too late. Knight takes s7, and he attacks the second pawn, and suddenly his rooks are active. So one mistake, and you can blunder it all away. So once again, the key thing here, not to allow your opponent to get back into the game, not to allow him to create counter-threat. Please, always think about your opponent's idea. Remember the method of 3 questions I have told you a few videos back. If you haven't seen it, definitely take a look. It's life-changing. So one of them is, what is your opponent's idea? You should constantly think about it and not allow him to execute if it's dangerous. It's as simple as that. That move a6 would have stopped all of my problems, but unfortunately I haven't played it. Now there is no turning back. I played here rook takes a2, just winning the pawn, but knight to c6, and once again there is a huge double threat. Rook went to e8, I really want to play rook to e2, my opponent plays rook to d1, I play knight to e4. It's kind of a relief for me, because I was expecting something else. I was expecting probably rook takes b6, and after rook e2 just king g1 or something like that. But anyway, rook to d1 has happened, knight e4, and now at least I thought, okay, I'm creating this thread, this thread, this thread. That must be something. But my opponent just takes there. I played rook e6 just to avoid any checks, and he played rook to c1, protecting the rook. And here I felt again, okay, I have some chances. Yes, the material is equal, but I'm just taking this pawn here with a check, so I'm a pawn up again, and the engine says it's pretty much equal, but in a practical point of view, it's still far away from a draw. So all I need to do is just play g6, and make sure my king has some luft to go, maybe just place it on g7 to avoid all of the checks, and then slowly trying to improve my position, threatening to bring the second rook here, remaneuver the knight somewhere like to f4 so that it attacks everything. I mean, there is a lot of ideas for me. Unfortunately, I'm making here the final mistake. Absolute blindness once again. I can't imagine how I did it. I played rook to d2, completely missing in just one move that my opponent has a check. Remember the checks, captures, and threats method to avoid the blunders? Well, somehow my brain stopped to work, and I forgot about the check. This is like the first thing you must always make sure that doesn't work for your opponent. And this is exactly the mistake I'm making here. And the problem is, I really have thought about it over here. Before I played rook to e6, I thought, okay, let me wait with the move rook takes f2, because I'm opening up this f-file, and that might be useful for his rook. So I'm gonna play rook e6 first, threaten some things, maybe a rook to c2, and then leave this check for the future. But just 2 moves later on, I completely forgot about the fact that I'm leaving this rook empty. I was worried about like not having the rook here, because if the knight are going to be attacked, then my rook can be in trouble. So I decided, well, d2 is a very nice square for it. But So crazy. I could have at least played something like rook f4, right, to maintain the control of the f file. Everything is great. Or just g6. g6 is a key move here. But rook d2 and after rook f1, I have absolutely zero chances. In fact, I'm lucky not to lose this position because suddenly my king is in trouble. Rook king goes to g5. So if it goes to g6, then there are some checks with a knight. Knight to e7. I cannot take it because of this pin. And then the knight comes to f5. My king has nowhere to hide. And king to g5, just rook to b5 check. I played king to h6. But now knight e5, threatening this, threatening this. No way to deal with it. If I play f6, that was my initial idea, and I thought, okay, maybe I can survive here, but unfortunately there is just a perpetual check thanks to this knight h8, and the king has no escape. I played knight d6 as a last chance, but unfortunately knight g4 and knight d5 back. So the only chance to avoid the repetition here is to play king to h5, but I actually thought this is not the right way. Like if you play g4, then maybe it's something. At least I can play king h6, and even though the engine says it's completely equal, I thought, well, there is some chances. You know, this king is more vulnerable, maybe I can still create some threats. The problem is, after king to h5, my opponent can just step back with the rook, and then those horrible checks are coming, knight to f3, knight to c4, all possible discover checks, so I must block this file, but I don't have an easy way to do it, because f5, I thought, well, just not good. He plays g4 with a check, I cannot take it because of some knight f3 discover check, winning the rook. And then if I cannot go here or here because of the same fork with knight f3, so I have to go back. But now he just takes the pawn, the material is equal, but I would argue, and the engine confirms, it's just much more pleasant with whites to play because you have so many threads, you have all of your pieces active. This is definitely not a play for win. And the second way to block the rank is to play g5, but once again just knight f3 with a double thread, and the engine makes some weird moves like rook e2, allowing this knight e4 fork, or just taking the pawn. I mean, this is as simple as that, just rook takes g5. I mean, no chance I'm gonna play for a win here. So I decided to finally get back to being reasonable, and after knight e5 just repeated the moves. It was also move number 40 here, and so I was in total time trouble, and we agreed to a draw. So this is it. Let me know in the comments if you can relate to this issue, because throughout my whole chess career I had like thousands of examples when I couldn't have realized the full potential of my position and failed to win the game. Now in this video I share with you the perfect game that I have played, but still it wasn't enough. So crazy.